or their application 74 to attend Westfield Technical Academy and or Smith Vocational. We don't deny students. That's not our philosophy. We want kids to go and get a trade in what they want to do. And Smith Voc definitely has a unique agricultural and animal science program. And Westfield Technical Academy has like collision. We have a lot more cabinet making this year, and we have the aviation program. So these are ones that we can't replicate at CTEC, but we do see the numbers increasing, and you see that across the state. There's really a push for college and career, where it used to be a push for college. They're now pushing college and career, because to be honest, a lot of these are students who are leaving these vocational schools are leaving with a trade, and they're going right into the workforce, and they're making significant money because they have a skill set that not everybody else has.
You go to the next one, Steve. Yeah, before I get into what's not in the operating budget, there's I want to just touch briefly on highlight on a couple things that actually are in the budget that may that do lend to the increase in the discretionary. There's an increase to Mr. Wykander's budget by 25,000. Some of that's just simple inflation, but a large chunk of that is for snow removal. For the last few years, we have been able to offset snow removal costs from the transportation revolving account when we owned our buses, and it was a revenue source for us. The transportation revolving account is at zero now. The last use of that was to the project that we have to remove the gas tank, the underground tank, by the bus garage right now that needs to come out. So there is no revenue source anymore to offset snow removal. Knowing the increase in cost of that, I felt we needed to guard against in case we had a winter that was like sometimes we've gotten in the past. So that is a large chunk of the increase of the maintenance department. The other increase is $80,000 has been earmarked for a school resource officer, a second school resource officer in the district that would split time between Powder Mill and Woodland schools. So that is still being discussed. Chief Landis has a meeting with Superintendent Willard, school committee as well in the next couple of weeks to look at options that have been presented to us other than the $80,000. But as of right now, there is $80,000 in unreserved salary or salary reserved for that position if we decide to move forward with it. There are 3 positions that are being lost to attrition in this budget. None of those positions have impact on the students or the classroom. So what is not in the budget? The grant money, a large part of our grant money is IDEA, in that we have interventionists, 3 reading, 1 math, and 15 paraprofessionals. School choice, as I told you before, is $1.3 million this year, so we've put a lot more in school choice. 11 of the 11 out-of-district special ed tuitions that I talked about earlier are in school choice and circuit breaker. We are adding a Woodland assistant principal to the school this year, to the budget this year. This is a new position, one that is needed and has been advocated by the teachers and staff at Woodland for some time. The Powder Mill AP in school choice is just a shift of monies from one account to another. And the 504 coordinator has been in the E6 grant. That position has proven extremely valuable to the district over the last few years, and the administration has felt it is important to keep that position moving. So that has been put into school choice and circuit breaker. And rural school aid, 4 special ed teachers, and 2 paraprofessionals. Yep.
I just want to quickly talk about rural school aid. I know I've been a huge advocate, and I've asked you to help support me in our efforts to increase rural school aid. It's the only additional money that we receive above and beyond the $30 per pupil and your minimum local contributions. This year, the governor has funded it at 15 million. And so I'm anticipating getting what we received this year. There is talks in the new legislation bill that has been passed where they are cutting some of the language. So we're still advocating to keep rural school aid based on the tiered way they're doing it now. If these 4 in-district education teachers, 3 of them last year were paid out of the ESSER funding. So with the ESSER funding gone, we have identified our use of rural school aid for them. And the additional teacher is a teacher for children with autism that we need at Powder Mill School. And we need 2 paraprofessionals for that. Strong advocacy on the part of our 3 communities. Whenever you talk to your legislators, anybody in government, tell them how important rural school aid is, because that is about $380,000 in salaries right there. That is not in the operating budget. And if we didn't have that rural aid, we need those teachers, that money would be in the operating budget.
Steve, I'm going to have you go one more and then come back to this, okay? So the capital cost requests, we're looking at about $125,000. There's 2 capital requests that we have. One is to do over the Powder Mill stairs here in the building. Over time, where they're located with the glass all in front, that those stairs are starting to lose tread. Over the next year, they're going to start coming up, peeling away from the steel underneath them and become unsafe for use. And we need to have that accessibility for the 2nd floor. So that project would not only be replacing, I don't even know Eric would probably know better what the floor, yeah, what type of flooring, but it's also to provide window tinting so these would last longer, so that the sun would not, the impact of the sunlight would not beat down on the materials, and hopefully these would last longer. The second part would be $65,000 for a maintenance van. The van right now is about 14 years old, 16 years old. It may not pass inspection in May here. This is the van that we use to go to all 3 buildings on campus, to really do a lot of the work that Eric and his crew do each and every day to offset many of the costs if we had to contract out. So realize that we asked for a utility truck last year for this same price. The utility truck was in the same condition that the van is right now. The truck has been purchased and it's on its way, but this would give Eric and the maintenance crew 2 reliable vehicles moving forward to do the work that they do to keep the buildings in the shape that they are each and every year. Steve, I'll have you go back to that next one.
I always like to do the highlights to the budget. What are the elevator speech pieces that you can all take away when you think about our budget and people ask you questions about it? So the highlights to this year budget, the big one is that there's no ESSER funding. As Mr. Chamel said, we used about 1.3 million to offset the budget last year. That money was gone. So what we creatively did was put the staff that was being paid out of ESSER funding into our rural school aid. Our E&D and our school choice, they weren't what they normally are, but the total amount spent was the same as we do in previous years. And all of our district special education costs are coming out of our school choice revolving. And in the past, we were able to offset some of the vocational tuitions with school choice revolving. And last year we used the rural school aid to help pay for some special ed costs out of district. We can't do that anymore. So this is also our last year of paying for out of district vocational tuitions and transportation. You see that that has the greatest impact on our budget. This is going to be an increase this year of 220,000, and that's a low estimate based on the number of students who are leaving, based on the number of students who are going, and it keeps going every year. So this is like my little elevator speech. Our needs of our children are getting more and more severe. We need to continue to meet their needs. And with the additional behaviors, I do a boots on the ground where I meet with the teachers and staff, and all of the teachers at Woodland School really advocated for a need for an assistant principal. It's not the first year I heard it. I've heard it for the past 2 years. We've tried different things to see if it would work, and it really can't. It's time with the needs of our children down at Woodland that we have to put in an assistant principal to help support the teachers and to help support one principal in the building with all the behavioral needs that they have in the school.
Yes.
What is being done to try to get the 16 special ed students, which cost us $1.2 million, back into the district? Are we looking to hire somebody for these? A lot less expensive than what we're sending them out for?
Yeah, so last year we had 18 students. This year we're down to 16. Some of them, 2 of them, Robin was able to work to bring back. I believe we have 4 programs in Woodland and Powder Mill, 2 for autism, 2 for social and emotional. Robin did a cost analysis for us that I believe the savings, total projected savings of the 4 programs is about $11,000 for 16.
But these remaining students, are we working on getting them back into the schools?
These are children with severe needs that are either they're at a specialized setting because they've not had success here. So if we can, we have one that we are returning this year back to our school, but we can't return students from a specialized setting until they're ready to return, and we have the support certain placements for them in the district.
Some of them are so unique that we wouldn't be able to, but
It's more of a one-off situation.
so
Yeah,
of the 11 students that go to these specialized program, I think there are 5 different placements. No more than 2 students go to one of these placements. Yes, Nicole.
Do you have numbers for the different in district programs, like the social emotional and Woodland?
The number of students,
Yeah.
I can get those for you. I don't have them.
Robin does. Robin, you can answer that right now.
You were asking about the number of students in each of the
in-district.
Yeah. There are 5 and 4 in the programs here that currently exist at Powder Mill. And there are 6 and 4 in the programs at Woodland.
So 6 social emotional, 4 autism.
Other way around. Yep.
And the same with Powder Mill.
Powder Mill doesn't yet have an autism program, so those numbers are for the SEL program here and our Odyssey program, which is for children with intellectual disabilities.
And then my other question was, do you have LPVAC numbers for
How many students?
Yeah.
I don't have that with me, but I can get that.
In terms of the number of students who are as
Special ed?
not special ed, vocational.
Okay, yeah, so there's 5 special ed that go over to LPVC.
Right.
The general vocational programs and number of students, I can get that for you.
The average was 56, and our
Yes.
tuition, right?
Yes.
It went down about $266,000 this year.
So how LPVC determines the assessment is they take a 3-year average of the students that go over. So last year our 3-year average was based on 58 students. This year our average, I believe, is 56.
And you don't have that broken down right now.
I can get that for you.
And then the tuition number is the like 1,100 and some odd that for this year, or is that change?
11,000.
900.
Something around.
Yeah.
We did look after the last meeting that we had, because that was a question that you brought up, and Aaron did send that information out. And basically the number breakdown almost was exactly the percentage of the obligation that towns pay. So Southwood was right around 85%, I think. Granted, it's 16%, and Tallinn was a little bit number. I don't have the hard numbers, but I know the
For the LP back.
yeah, for the LP back tuition. That like the numbers that were going.
So Nicole, you're looking for the total number of students that attend LPVC and then have that broken down by town as well.
I
Okay,
believe Aaron's already got that information, Joe, for this year.
yeah,
I don't know
okay,
about next year.
yeah.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
On special ed. I mean, that's going up extraordinary every year. It's climbing and climbing and climbing. Is the state pitched in more every year that's gone up, or basically stay the same?
Yeah.
We do have, I'm sorry, I have a neck issue right now, so I'm kind of struggling, which is why I'm not sitting. We do have circuit breaker, which I think this year the cap is $50,000. It's about 50,000. So anything that you pay above and beyond the 50,000, you get about, I think it's 85%. 75% of the difference between the 50 and what we pay. So say we send a student out for 150,000. That $100,000, the delta between that 50,000 and the 150, we would get $75,000 for it. And if Joe goes to another one of those slides. Oh, can someone go to this slide on what's not in the budget? Right there. Nope. See how it says school choice and circuit breaker?
Yeah.
$275,000 out of that money right there, that circuit breaker money, is paying for out of district vocational tuitions. So that money that we get back helps offset next year's out of district vocational. Out of district special ed, sorry, out of district special ed. So the tricky thing about circuit breaker is you don't get it for the year you're sending the kids, you get it the year after they're there. So it like in a year like last year when we had to spend so much, we got some extra money this year to help offset next year, but we didn't have the money in this year's budget.
And no program like that for vocational school.
Like, oh, no.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the fuel tank is coming out.
Yes.
What's left on that building? They're leasing that for X amount of years still, or is that going to be finished up?
LPVC will have come probably this spring. They will move their buses out when their building is set in Agawam. I think they were waiting on paving this spring, but I would say in the next couple of months they will take their buses over there, and LPV, that will be the last of LPVC and the partnership with the regional school district and transportation.
And was there revenue coming in for them renting that garage, or that was all part of the package?
That was all part of it. There might be a little revenue. We have the snow brush that's still down there. That's in good shape. That obviously, if the buses aren't here, we wouldn't have any use for that anymore. But you know, there's some options of putting that out for some companies to look and come and take that. Mr. Wykander's looking at that option as well. So
no plans for the building or the fencing out back, all that. It's just
not at this point in time. I think what an advantage of, to go back to the capital and two more, having two new vehicles in the capital the last couple of years, that they would be able to be stored in the garage now. That would add some hopefully length of time in
so maintenance will take over the garage.
The maintenance will take over the garage. Absolutely. Yeah. But the gas tank hasn't been in use since July 1. We had a 3-year agreement with LPVC that year 1 we would be responsible. Year 2, I think we shared it, and year 3 was on LPVC. And when July 1 came, they no longer was going to carry the insurance and didn't want it, so we stopped it. Had it drained, and so they actually had it drained or used it up. They used it up, and so Eric has done his due diligence in putting that out for bid, and we've awarded that, so they'll start that process in the next couple of months here.
The resource officer, if that doesn't go through, will that come out of the budget or will that money be absorbed somewhere else? Is it technically in there now, the 80,000?
It's in there now.
It's in there now.
Right. So if that doesn't happen, does that come out or does it stay and get absorbed?
If the budget doesn't, pass, we have to collect feedback and solicit feedback. But we couldn't just take it out and just say we have enough. We'd have to go through this whole process again.
Anyone else?
I would just like for all of our teachers who are here tonight just to stand up. I'd just like you to see all of our staff members and all of our administrators that are coming to support the budget. We've met with all of them personally. We look really hard at budget numbers. And our teachers, I know, take time out of their time to come and meet with us to talk about what their needs are. So I'm glad to see you here and know that we do listen to you when you talk. And we know that you have the toughest job in the district because you're right on with our kids. And I know it's gotten harder over the years. So I just want to say thank you for all you do for our district. You don't get enough recognition.
All right, yes.
I'm a selectman from Tallinn. I would kind of, now that the budget session's over, I would kind of like a rundown of the regional agreement that we just got a letter on for next year, how the change in that.
Well,
Is it an appropriate form for the,
Sure it is. Yeah, you wanna?
I would like to.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So, well, see, we get, oh, there we go. So the letter that we sent out was basically a follow-up to that meeting we had about a month or so ago. Basically just notifying the towns that for fiscal year 26, we will have to make an adjustment for the out-of-district tuition for the kids that are going to the out-of-district vocational schools. Currently, our regional agreement is silent on the payment or the allocation of those funds. Prior to 2015, there was a policy that indicated that the district would pay for the out-of-district tuition for any child that went to one of those schools. In 2015, an updated policy was put in place to reflect the law and to clarify basically and identify CTEC as our preferred vocational school. When that policy got updated, it specifically outlined and indicated that we were going to follow Chapter 74, Section 7 for out-of-district tuition. That section of the law clearly indicates that the towns themselves are responsible for the financial payment for the out-of-district tuition for the kids in their town that go to those out-of-district vocational schools. So what we have currently right now is we have a regional agreement that is silent. We have a policy that clearly indicates that was done in 2015 that clearly indicates that we were supposed to be following Chapter 74. Weren't. So now that we identified that this year, we couldn't do anything for this budget that Mr. Trammell presented because all of the numbers and the allocations for DESE all get submitted in October. We didn't realize this whole issue until Superintendent Willard went to the conference in November at the Cape. He was actually in a session where they were talking about out-of-district vocational costs. And she posed a question to the people in the room. How do you guys deal with that, with the increased costs? How is that affecting your budget? And they all kind of looked at her like she had two heads. Because no other district in the Commonwealth that is a regional district doing that. We were sort of like the last one to the party here that have realized that we shouldn't be doing it this way. And when we went and looked at it, we've identified that we really need to follow the law. It was something that I sort of picked up on last year when we were doing the budgets. It's like, wow, this fee's going up and there's a disproportionate of where the kids are going and this cost is elevating. But when we got this additional information, all the letter really is indicating is to give the towns notice that starting in fiscal year 2026, so for next year, what we will be doing is we're going to have to take those children out of the regional budget, and then the cost and the responsibility will go to the individual towns. Now, we don't have the information here, we'll get this out. I did reach out to our MASC representatives for the state to try to get an idea. You guys asked if we could get an idea of what this number would look like. Because currently those costs are averaging about $20,000 a child. So we have the $20,000 expense in the region. We're offsetting obviously some of that because of the minimal local contribution that we've received from the towns for that individual child. We obviously have money that comes in from Chapter 70 funding as well. So the nice thing about this is that by pulling these children out of the regional district, because we're in a autonomous state, regional cost, the revenue coming in from Chapter 70 will not change. We will not lose any revenue on those kids, because we'll be, if we change it, we have 60, what do we say, Joe? 61 now for next year. So there'll be 61 children pulled out of our budget for the following year that will then get reallocated to the towns. The district will not lose a dime of Chapter 70 funds because we're in a whole harmless state. We will lose the minimal local contribution from the towns for those kids, but you're going to end up reallocating that to the, so it's not going to cost you $20,000 for each kid. The additional benefit that the towns will receive is that the towns will now be eligible for Chapter 70 funding. So there'll be additional revenue that come into the towns for that. There'll be a wash with the minimal local contribution because you're basically already allocating, and it comes out of the regional payment, and so you're going to have to pay for the children themselves, and then you're going to have the $20,000 cost. Well, it won't cost $20,000. It'll cost the 20 minus the Chapter 70 funds, minus the minimal local contribution that you're going to reallocate. So there'll be a delta that's left, and that'll be the cost for the towns for each one of the children. The regional budget will certainly see a positive change to this. We will lose, let's say on average, a $10,000 minimal local contribution from the town, but we will also lose the $20,000 expense. So the regional district, every child that will be pulled out, there'll be a, let's say, I don't know for exact, but with those numbers, it'd be a $10,000 reduction or addition of available money. Because we've taken the children out, we didn't lose Chapter 70 funding, we lost the expense for the cost, but we also lost the minimal local contribution, but it's a net win. That will now get reallocated to the towns. It's not a zero-sum game because there's going to be Chapter 70 funding that the towns get that would not have been there before. So the district doesn't lose Chapter 70, the towns get it. When we first thought about this, we're like, wait a minute, is this okay? We are the last ones to the party with this. Every other regional school district has already done this and has benefited from this, and that's why they do it that way. So that's what the letter is just to notify the towns that we're obligated to do this. We're not following the law currently. We need to do this the right way. There's two parts to it. Number one is that notification. We have to do that. The second part, which is a request that we voted on at our last school committee meeting, was to request our legal team to come up with proposed language that we would submit to the towns to clarify the regional agreement so that this never comes up as a question again. Part of the issues that we've got is that the regional agreement again was silent on this. I don't think it was done maliciously because at the time when it was done, there was a policy in place that said that the district would pay. But when that policy went away, I don't think, in talking with the people that were involved with that, I just don't think they understood from a financial perspective what that policy change did. They were really looking to allocate and identify CPEC as a preferred facility. But because of that change and indicating we were going to follow Chapter 74, that's when we should have made this switch, and it didn't happen. So the recommendation from the language side is what we'll do is now that we voted on it, we're gonna have our legal team sort of come up with the language. I talked to Pam the other night. What we can do is when that language comes back, we can get that out to the town so that they can take a look at it. We can massage it on our side. In order, before we can even vote on it or do, we have to send it to Desi. Desi needs to look at it. They've got to let their lawyers look at it. They've got to take it to the commission. If they don't like it, they'll send it back to us and say, you need to fix ABC. Then we send it back to them. Finally, the commissioner looks at it. The new commissioner will give a green light on it. Great, it will come back to us. And then we would give it to the towns to be able to put it forward as a vote at town meeting. Whether that passes or not doesn't really change what we need to do. It's just, from our perspective, it's needed to clarify the regional agreement so that there is no questions going forward. So does that help answer your question?
Can I just jump in for 1 second?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, before, in the steps in the process there, after that, the initial request for put some language together goes out to the lawyers, and then goes back to the 3-member towns to take a look at. I'd like to bring everybody back together again for one more roundtable meeting like we had a couple of months ago. So that once we see that initial language, we have time to digest it. We can all come back together, select board members, finance committee, and finalize that before we send the draft off to the state. Then send the draft off to the state. Then it comes back to us, and then we need to bring it to our individual town meetings. But I think it's crucial that we have another roundtable meeting with some language to take a look at first.
Can I ask one other follow-up question? Is it basically, are we, now that this is getting handed to the towns, are the towns going to be responsible for any administration or just writing a check?
No, there is a solution to that. So that was actually a question that Ted and I talked about today. I don't know the ins and outs of whether you just write a check to the state or how that works. Well, we obviously do it now, right? We send the checks off to the institutions or whatever needs to be done. We were instructed that as a district, we can provide administrative support so that the towns don't have to deal with this. What we have to do is almost create like a little side company, because it can't be part of the regional district, but what we would identify, and we can have Mr. Trammell sort of figured out, like, what would the administrative cost be for us to do it? We do it with no markup. It's a pass-through. We pass through to the towns. We figure out what it would cost per child. SPAMO, it can be a small fee. That way the towns don't have to worry about it. District can take care of the administrative side of it, but it would be an extra regional agreement that is not considered or revenue. Nothing gets part of the regional agreement. It's not put into that. It's done on the side, but it is a way that we can take care of that administrative service for the town so they don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, we don't know how to do this. We don't want to make a mistake.
Thank you. Thank you.
Perfect.
Joe, how much do you want from me? I'm looking at 2 different numbers. What are you thinking?
What are you looking at?
Show what numbers.
I'm either looking at 422.32 or I'm looking at 761.056. Which one is that? What? The town of Southwick, what are you looking?
The town of Southwick's assessment would be 13,763,955.
I understand that, but what in the end?
You're talking the discretionary amount, Joe?
Yeah, what
Okay.
Well, so the discretionary, it would be for Southwick, the assessment for the discretionary would be 356,474.
356. Right, it's the first one like that. Okay, and for Granville, it would be
50,873 would
just
be.
so they know. Okay.
Yep.
And then town would be the 12,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is that over and above what we were assessed last year? What is the increase from last year's budget that we're being assessed?
So the total assessment is just comparisons just below that. So if you look at this piece of paper and you look at number 5, the assessments.
Yeah.
Just below that, the assessment comparisons from last year to this year.
Okay. So
the increase in Southwick's budget this year is 823,529 from last year this year.
But the vast majority of that is in state
Yeah.
mandated
Yes.
increases.
It's 440,000 is mandated by the state.
Now, obviously, next year, once the out of district tuition issue goes in, there will be certainly a rebalancing of that cost for all three towns. The town of Southwick should see a significant decline compared to what we're paying this year. Holland will see a decline, Grandville will see an increase. Because those students will come out and they'll be allocated to the town. So compared to what Southwick's paying right now from a percentage of that cost is more than what the cost would be for the children that they'll be responsible for.
You're saying as a percentage.
Well, so right now, when we have these costs right out of district vocational, Southwick's paying 82%.
83%. Yes, 83%.
83%. Granville's paying 84. Granville's paying 12%. Holland's paying 4%. Okay, so we're paying, Southwick's paying 83% of the overall cost, and they're utilizing 50% of the children going out of district. So there's a delta there. So once those children get pulled out, that cost comparison for next year, the amount of money that the town of Southwick pay compared to what they're paying this year will be a lower amount.
But the point that I'm making is your budget is $800,000 more this year, regardless of percentage of this or that. It's in total $800,000, and it's what $952,000 for all three towns.
Yeah.
Almost $1 million more, and we're asking all our other departments and everybody else to level funds, you know. But then the school district has $1 million more and $800,000. So that's just
understood. So if you look at the vocational costs and the out of district vocational tuition, that more than encompasses the additional cost for the towns. So it's I don't disagree with you, but the challenge is it's mandated costs. We can't not send somebody to an out of district vocational school if they want to go there. If it's not something that's provided by CTEC, they're eligible to go by the state of Massachusetts. If somebody requires out of district special ed funding to go to that location because we can't provide it because of their needs, we can't just say, sorry, you can't go. So those costs, when those go up, there is no option to just say, sorry, you have to do level funding. Like we don't have that option.
So a whole bunch of these students are going out of district for one reason or another, special ed, vocational. So then what do you offset it? Are there any cuts here because students went somewhere else?
Well, the problem is you're dealing with a small minority of numbers. And in the aggregate, it's not enough where you can say, okay, it isn't like you take an entire class of 30, okay, they're all gone. And now we can save the cost of a teacher. If one here, one there, one there, two there, one there, one there. There's not enough meat there to be able to sit and be able to reduce and say, great, we've got 50, how many kids going out of district special ed total? 16? So 16 and 60, you're only talking 70 kids throughout an entire district. Not enough kids to be able to have the ability to say, okay, we can pull a teacher out at each grade level because all these kids are gone. There's just not enough.
Have you looked at the layers of administration, say all these teachers, coaches? Are all the coaches still needed, or can you offset some of this there? That's not directly involved with the student. That's a layer in between. Have you looked at any of those?
I would argue.
Jen, do you want to?
Yeah.
I can get you the microphone here, you want?
Yes, we did, when we were in our budget conversations, talk about district coaches. They do a lot of the work. Right now, a lot of our assistant principals and our principals are being tied up with a lot of behavioral issues. And so the coaches are going in and they're providing the wraparound professional development services to our teachers in the classroom. We're going to be coming up with a new ELA curriculum next year. We're coming up with a new writing program next year up at the regional school. We have a science of reading initiative down at Woodland School, and we only have one reading coach for K to 6 to incorporate the science of reading. And we also only have one math coach for science and math, and our elementary teachers are still expected to maintain this new pedagogical way of teaching, and they go in and they work with our teachers. And when I did my boots on the ground tour, one of the things that our teacher said to us is we cannot lose the coaches, but we do want the coaches to spend more time in the classroom.
So I think the question is, I'm gonna say, when I went to school, there was no such thing as teacher coaches, and there were department heads, and the department heads were the ones that helped out the other teachers. And so I'm just saying, I don't understand what teachers coaches really do.
Is there any teacher here who wants to talk about that? The importance, or one of the principals, do you want to talk about the importance of the coaches in the building?
I did speak to it, or at least to some degree speak to it. The instructional pedagogy has changed rapidly, you know, and to Superintendent Willard's comments, definitely our math initiative and our ELA initiative, but also now the state of Massachusetts has a new science initiative, phenomena-based science. So our teachers need to learn, like they need to rethink how they're teaching. They need to learn it so that they can instruct in that way. And it is different from the way we all learn, because the learners in front of us are different than they were when we went to school. We were a different kind of learner. So the instructional coaches really, they support the teachers with job embedded professional learning. So if you think about the old school model was at the start of the school year, you get professional development for one day, and then you're, or 2 or 3 days, like you have a couple built in, and then you're just expected to do it and know how to do it and remember from that one day. What the instructional coaches do is they support that initial day of learning, and then they are on a regular basis checking in with teachers and supporting what they need as things come up. They meet with groups and small teams of teachers to support that learning ongoing, also to support their lesson plan development, and to support looking at data for how it's going. So when we collect the data from student performance, looking at analyzing that. So they're very, very busy. They support the they really are there supporting the instruction as we transition from older ways of addressing student learning to newer ways of addressing student learning. At the regional school right now, those the new health and PE standards that Massachusetts just rolled out, it takes a lot of time to look at those, and we call it unpack those, but what does it really mean? And then what does it look like in our district, and how are we going to teach it in our district? So instructional coaches will do that work as a small group with that department of teachers as part of that.
So our newer teachers that we are hiring, are they appropriately trained?
Yes, but I think part of what we all have to realize is that teaching itself has extensively changed. So when I began my teaching career, I had a classroom of kids and I taught one thing, and some kids learned it, some kids didn't. When we were all in school, the teacher kept moving, and education is different. We are teaching now all the students, all different levels, all of the time. Differentiation and the way we are working with students has completely changed. And so at any given time, you can have learners. If you're a 5th grade teacher and you're teaching reading, you can have students who are still learning letter sounds, and you can have a student who's reading at an 8th grade reading level. And there's an expectation that each one of those students is going to be challenged with what they need. I can say when I began my career as a teacher 25 years ago, that's not what we did. We put out one lesson. That's not how we do it now. It's so completely different that the breadth of what teachers do in the course of a day is expansive beyond what people I think really understand and realize. So coaches, part of what they're doing is working on creating and working with that teacher around the breadth of that experience. What's happening with this group of students? What's happening with this set of students? What about these students? What about these high students? They're helping to fill that entire volume because it's very expansive. So the role they do is very important in making sure that every single kid is learning every single day and getting what they need.
We used to have reading groups, math groups, for different levels. That's
We-
why I don't.
We do, but I would say it's, and I did too, but it's so much more expansive than that because we're at, you know, at a almost a molecular level with kids. So we have groupings, but like I said, we also, you know, back in the day, some kids would leave and they would be in special classes. It's inclusion and scaffolding and differentiating has made a classroom so much more expansive than what it was.
And then you're
And I
not.
think our teachers are saying, what?
I remember when I went through this school system, I can remember some of the kids that I know were not getting that help and they fell behind and they were lucky to graduate. And some of them, it wasn't even their fault. It wasn't identified that they had dyslexia or whatever that, you know, different things. And I graduated in '87. So I still remember the kids to this day that I felt so bad for that I wish they were going to get help and they never did.
And by,
Yeah.
but the DESE also mandates that we know who our lowest 20% is in every grade level. And our teachers are expected to give them above and beyond with that.
Trying to get them to
Accelerated growth, yes.
You know, we often talk about a trajectory for a student. So, you know, I'm gonna use my arm as kind of like the arrow. So we want in a given year, a kid who's here to get there. And that's a regular progression. But if a student is struggling and they're not here, they're down here, I still want them to get. So their trajectory now is steeper and it's a harder hill. And that means they're getting more time. That means they're getting a smaller number. So instead of having 4 kids in a group, the student who needs that steep trajectory, that's 2 kids. I have 6th grade teachers who are doing 1-to-1 for 15 minutes a day with a student because their trajectory is so steep that they're working on skills that no one else in the room needs. So it's a completely different system that we use. And I think, again, what you're saying, we don't want to leave kids behind.
Exactly.
We're looking, I mean, today we have parent-teacher conferences and parents are looking at benchmark scores and they're saying, look at the growth my kid's making, look at the progress. And that's what we want for every single student. But it is labor intensive, it is person intensive, and it's time intensive.
And I'd like to say that all of our teachers, and I think Rachel will agree with me, she's a brand new reading teacher right now. It's almost like she walked out of college 3 years ago and the way she taught is no longer the way she teaches her reading block. And our teachers have worked so hard because we went from a balanced literacy approach to a science of reading approach. And pedagogically, it couldn't be any different. So when new teachers come to our district, they're not teaching the science of reading now in colleges. It is something that we're working on with the local colleges. But our coaches are also, we changed our mentoring program up this year so that when teachers come to our district and they're brand new teachers, they have time designated that the coaches spend with just them so that we can teach them the Southwick Valley Randall way, that they have the supports they need in order to teach the way we teach in math and the way we teach in reading. Because you're not going to get that in a one-day PD, which is not.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So thanks, Joe, for helping me with this. So in theory, I have to go back to my team and ask for $823,000, $823,529. Not the 356.
Correct.
So the movable room is the 356,474 is where we can play with it.
Yes.
And I'm not asking, so last year you came to my meeting and I asked you to move 40 or 60 grand and I got slapped around a little bit and said, too late, too bad, nicely, and it's all good. And I think I told you to go in the elevator and leave. So now I'm gonna ask you now, it's just easier, right? So if you could please look at that 356,474 for the town of Southwick. I know you need every penny, I get that, and you also understand where I'm coming from.
I do.
Right, so just take another look at that when you guys have time, if there's anything you can do, I'd appreciate it.
So what
That's
we
why I
were-
was asked about the officer,
Yeah,
you know, because that 80 came out and that does something, and it's pennies. At the end of the day, it's pennies, I know that.
so what we look at, Joe, we would look at to the right column of that, we would look at the 420.
Right.
That would be the number that we would look at, and then the assessment would.
Right, the 422, 32.
Yeah, that's the number.
No, I'm saying.
Is there a simple question, under the pre-town, what would be the difference in set increase for from last year to this year?
Oh, the majority of it, if we can go back to the slide, it is your minimal local contributions. Two of our towns saw an increase and Tallinn saw a decrease because, Tallinn actually pays at the 82.5% minimal local contribution level. So you actually pay more per pupil, in your minimal local contributions than the other two towns do. Based on Joe's first slide, it talks about the wealth and all of the other aggregate. Go back one more. No, another one right there. So nope, over. Yep. So Southwick's increase this year was 441,511. That's set by the state. That's not set by us. Granville's increase of 117,941 set by the state, not us. Tallinn's decrease of 56,548, again, set by the state, not us. That's what they call it, minimum local contribution. That's the least that you can give.
Yeah, isn't that dependent on the number of kids from the towns in the district though?
Yes.
So it's, that number can be somewhat deceiving because it's gonna depend on the number of children from each town that are there. So that could, if you have more kids, that number is gonna probably go up anyway.
We understand that. That's not what we're questioning. We expected the $440,000. We have no problem with, we have to
Yep.
spend.
Oh, we do.
Well, we do, but we can't do anything about it. We have the problem with the other 420, which is 356.
Understood.
Which,
So I did like
can do something about.
a little bit of an estimate. So if you want to just keep scrolling. So what the biggest difference in our budget this year is really that we're still, there was a $220,000 increase to the out of district vocational tuitions that we're still paying. Keep going, go to the end. I did like a little rough thing, math, to kind of explain it so I could kind of understand it myself. Go. Go. No, I know. Is there anything else after this?
There's not, that's, thank you.
There's nothing after thank you? Oh, so.
Just a bill.
All right, all right, so, what that $400,000 is the difference of us coming in a zero discretionary line item and about the offset of what the towns would be paying for their vocational out of district tuitions that would be on the town for next year. So the towns next year would be on the hook for the $140,000 for out of district vocational tuitions. That's in here. That's really not a school responsibility, but we're paying for it. And then the other difference is the difference between the minimum local contribution and the foundation aid that we get per student, and the difference between the cost of the vocational. So we could take the difference, and I had it on a slide, it would be like, I think Southwick is paying $6,000 a student. So 6,000 times 35 would be about 185,000, plus you'd have what percentage of the $130,000 in transportation costs. So a lot of what this discretionary line item is the delta between school district responsibility and the fact that we're still paying a significant amount of the out of district vocational tuitions in our budget.
We get it, it's just, you know, the potholes, you see the roads, you drive them. And we're at the stage now, we're just talking like, we sit here and grind and grind and grind and save 2 or 3 cents on the tax base.
I hear you.
But we're at the point now where, and it's not your fault, it's just, we're the 20, 30 million for roads, and either we're gonna have to eventually bond for that. And forget the tax base, you know, we're gonna become the Little East Long Meadow, I guess. Don't want to, but it just, in Granville and Tallinn are no different, you know, we're all in the same boat.
I know.
So And it's not, you told us 5 years ago,
I couldn't-
things were changing.
They were changing, I
and
know.
here we are.
Here we are, but that's why rural school aid is so important. We were able to offset the budget by 385,000. We couldn't do that last year. Advocate, advocate, advocate. They want to change the language. They want to take the money away. They cannot take that money away. We do not exist without rural school aid.
Do you see
Got
that
to have it.
increasing?
What?
Do you see that increasing?
We're advocating, we're asking for the larger communities that receive the Student Opportunity Act money. We're advocating for them to start advocating for the rural schools. The Rural School Coalition recommended that rural school aid be funded at 60 million. Right now it's at 15 million. We're asking them to at least kind of do what they did with the SOA and go up $10 million a year. But the new language that just came out of the House bill, they really decimated the rural school aid. So now we're starting again back at the advocacy level to keep the funding in there, because one of the things they took out was like funding. Well, we need the funding. We can't keep regional, there's only so many places you can regionalize with. There's no way, there's no incentive, like they want to give you incentive money for regionalizing. Well, we are a region. So we need the money to continue our region. So that's where the advocacy comes in with the rural school aid.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out tonight.
Thank you, thank you.
Quick question, does 7 o'clock work better than 5 o'clock? Yes, okay, thank you. All right.